Have you ever put something innocent online or on your dating profile, like a simple pleasure you enjoy, only to realize it backfired spectacularly? Yeah, I've been there. Most of us have. More of the story, maybe skip hot bubble baths. Don't worry, I'll explain more down further in this episode. But if you've ever found yourself swiping, messaging, or navigating first dates thinking, am I doing this right? Or do I even want to be here? Then today's episode is for you. Welcome back, everybody, to Off Limits, the podcast where we celebrate the quirks, truths, and hilarity of relationships while embracing the beauty of masculine and feminine energy. I'm your host, Ellen Roars with Elle Daily. And today we're talking about something we've all experienced or witnessed from the sidelines online dating. Bum, ba-da. So, whether it's your first time or your 100th swipe, there's always something to laugh about, learn about, and talk about. Now, before we dive in, let me just say this. I'm not here to tell you how to live your dating life or that my way is the only way. It's just my thoughts, observations, and a few laughs to bring up. And more importantly, I'd love to hear your perspective. So make sure to make a comment, whether you're single, married, or happily avoiding all the dating apps entirely. I hear you, by the way, if you are trying to avoid those dating apps. I've been there. A lot of my girlfriends have been there, guy friends too. And I'll say for me, I often take breaks from the dating apps. Because honestly, sometimes I just get so tired of them. And I know, to be honest, I love data. And I know there's a lot of data out there that says online dating isn't ideal. But don't worry, we'll do a whole separate episode for that. And I want to say for me, I decided to continue to keep it up as an option. I continue to pop back into these apps because I feel like it's just one more outlet or an additional avenue to meet someone. So I think it's simple. It's kind of like, why not? The part that I don't like is when you're aimlessly, scrolling and you feel like they're an object. That's the part when I'm like, all right, this is too much for me. I'm going to take a little break. So if you're there, let me know. I totally understand it. So I will say the other part that keeps me going is I've had so many girlfriends who've had great luck with online dating, guys too. Some of them have even met the love of their life, their future husband or wife through these apps. So I don't want to give up on it. I just think the key is doing it the right way. So that's what we're going to talk about. And it inspired me. That's the part that inspired me to create this episode. Over the years, I've been on my fair share of dates, and I'm very specific about who I match with now. I'm very, very to the point where I can narrow it down easily because I'm a less is more. It works for me. It's kind of like my sales background. I'd much prefer a good qualified lead, if we're talking sales lingo, but a much more qualified man that resonates more with me. And what I mean by that is instead of just going on these endless, mindless dates that can be super exhausting and feel so tiring, I'd rather just not go through the motions. Like, I don't want to be going through the motions. I'd rather focus on the quality of the person and to know that I'm going out with someone that I have that same foundational interest in, that we have the same purpose too, like dating with a purpose and kind of those same interests and common goals. So here's the thing. I'll say one good thing, even though I've met some great guys on the date and maybe he's not my person or my final guy that I'm going to end up marrying, I've always taken something positive from each date. Most of the men I've met are great people. And men, I hope you're finding the same with some of the women out there. Maybe we all have some crazy stories. I think that's natural. And I have some that are definitely in my pocket that I can share. But in general, about 95% of my dates have been good. They're maybe not for me, but I've learned something new about myself, something about them, something just in general that I can take away. And I've had a good time. And if we can all approach dating this way, where we're thinking about as an opportunity, like an option, an opportunity to really enjoy ourselves and have fun, have a good experience, it really takes the pressure off. It's not about meeting your future spouse per se. Every date you have to be thinking, oh, this could be the one. And I have done that in my early 20s. I know it. I've been like, oh my gosh, he's the one. And then, you're let down. So you almost set yourself up for disappointment. So if you have no expectations other than to go be authentically you, enjoy your time together, you'll see that every date is really more about connecting and just seeing what happens, really going with the flow. So here's the thing. I know we talked a little bit about the overwhelming aspects to it when you're swiping all day. Maybe you're going left the entire time. Nothing seems to be a match. We've all been there, but truly, I believe there's someone for everyone. So the key again is to be authentically you, show up as yourself. And I even want to say this because I've got a lot of girlfriends that will be like, if I see another fishing or hunting picture, I'm going to lose my mind. But the thing is, both men and women, if you're into something and it's your passion, post about it. So, hey, if you're into fishing, hunting, golfing, put those photos in there because there are women who are totally into that and they want a guy just like you. So for me, example, personally, I'd rather date a masculine man who loves the great outdoors, hunting, fishing, golfing, rather than somebody that's playing Nintendo or Sega Genesis in his parents' basement. And not to say there might be some women out there that love the gaming. So, you know, I just am not into the Nintendo and Sega anymore. And when I say Nintendo and Sega, I think that might be aging me a bit, but you get the point. You see where I'm going with this. So that authenticity at the same time, it's so important then to make sure your profile represents you in the best way possible. So this is where that less is more when it comes to certain things. Those weird face pictures, sometimes it's a bit much, just, too much oversharing. We'll get into all of that. But the goal here is really, I don't want to tear anyone down. I just want to help us put our best foot, or shall we say, profile forward. So let's jump into it. All right. But before I forget, I've got a great big favor to ask. I'd love for you to follow the podcast on Spotify if you're listening there, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, hey, definitely make sure to like and subscribe, share it with your friends. Maybe send it to one of your friends that could use a little help with their dating profile too. You know who I'm talking about. All right, let's jump in. So the dating profiles, I'd love to say the good, the bad, and the bubble baths. I want to start with the profiles and those questions. So first off, can we talk about those questions on the dating apps? The question like, what are your simple pleasures? That was one I answered. And I thought, oh, this is a simple, easy question. I thought I was being very authentic by saying, I love the simple pleasures of fresh sheets, morning coffee, sunrise, sunset, and hot bubble baths. Harmless stuff, right? But apparently, for some guys, hot bubble bath translates to, are you ready for this? This is literally what he said. Let's skip the coffee and jump straight into a tub together. I mean, he didn't quite say it just like that, but it was to the point of, I'd take a hot bath with you. And I was like, oh, that's off limits, buddy. Like, I haven't even met you. I mean, hey, if you're in a committed relationship, guys and gals, you like each other, you're giddy about each other, and you're feeling that frisky fun, that's perfect. But when you have yet to meet for a coffee date, it can turn, for women especially, it can turn you off. It's like, ew, I don't know you yet. I don't see you that way. Women take a bit longer to warm up, gentlemen. So most of you on here, I'm sure you know that. But here we go. I mean, come on, dude. I have never met you. We've not talked on the phone. Let's just stick to coffee, okay? And I think I quickly deleted him. I just knew, I'm like, we're not looking for the right things. So here's where it gets funny though. Men and women, we are just wired differently. And I think it's what I love so much about men and women because we complement each other, but we can be complete opposites, right? So if I read, and most of us ladies, if we read on a profile, oh, my simple pleasures are fresh sheets and a hot shower, I'm thinking, cool. That's great. I hope you're clean. I don't get that visual or think, ooh, baby, hot steamy shower. Ooh, yeah. No, it's just, I mean, if we're down the road in a commitment, maybe I would make a little flirty comment. Absolutely. But that is probably when I'm ovulating and when we're in a committed relationship, right? So going back, a hot bubble bath for men, they're going to be like, For some men, it's just a whole different story. And honestly, maybe all of you men might be thinking that, and that was my miss. I took it off my profile. But most men know enough, they're wise enough to know, you know what, I'm going to leave that out. That's for down the road. So the lesson learned for me, hot bubble bath resonates differently for men than it does for me, talking about my simple joys after a long day. So note to self, this is where it's all about, the way people perceive things. So my intentions were good, but it did not resonate with this man specifically. So I just have to chuckle about it. So with that, let's jump into some do's for the profiles. And this can be both for men and women. I'm kind of combining them together. But this is where it's so important to really highlight your real interests. So, post some pictures, put some fun jingles in there, like weekend mornings on the lake if you're a lake person, or if you're artsy, gallery hopping and people watching. Maybe you love to jet set. I put that in my profile. I love to jet set and explore new places. So put those fun details in. And then really those foundational details are really important. If you're one that you want somebody that enjoys, getting out and being active, or maybe you want somebody that's not a huge party animal, you're kind of in the life more where you're, cooking and trying to eat healthy at home. And what are some other really important ones? Here's a really important one. If you have kids, make sure you state that you have kids, especially if they're younger and they're at home, because if you continue and you get to that point where you're going to be in a committed relationship, that's a huge piece of the puzzle. I will tell you, there's so many men that do not put that on their profile. And then I find out as we're chatting, and I love kids, don't get me wrong, but I'm in a, 43, never been married, no kids myself. So I have that freedom, that flexibility. So for me, I would really have to really like the guy to be okay with juggling all the schedules and such. And not saying that I would completely exclude it. I just want to be aware of it. And the other thing, it allows me to say, hey, what are the ages? So if a gentleman has kids that are in college, that's a um, much easier situation for me, because then we can still go travel and we can do the things that I'm used to doing, because he's not having to put the kids as a priority. So that's just a quick example. So same for both men and women, those foundational things. I've got little ones. I'm looking to create a family, I want kids. I also have to put that on there too, because I've had a hysterectomy. So really important that I let the men know, hey, if you want to have a family, I can't biologically have kids. So those are just some high level, really important details to, I think, hash out right away. And then just make sure you don't have all selfies. So a do post the range of photos, your hobbies, your outings with friends. Don't have too many of the selfies. I will say, do smile, make sure you get some pictures of your beautiful smile. It's always a universal inviting thing. I actually know too, this is some cool, I love data, like I said. And so there's studies that say people that have red are more likable. So a lot of times for my meetings, I'll try to have some red on when it's a work meeting with a client. It makes you more approachable, more likable. I should really wear more red. I love my greens. You can see I love green. But the other thing, so have some pictures if you're wearing red, especially if you love red, makes you more approachable. I don't know. It's research. I'll find out more about exactly why. And then I talked a little bit about some of these don'ts, but I think it's important to not have too many of your pets and your kids. So just balance those out. Great to show your passions and your people. Um, absolutely. But sometimes they're so prevalent in some of these pictures that you don't really get to see who the person is, if that makes sense. And I hope I'm not offending anyone by that comment, because that might be one that you're like, what? So again, this is where it says, or where I want to say, be you, be authentically you, because the right person is going to love it. Avoid those overly filtered or weird angles that are trying to make you look better than you really, I don't want to mislead anyone, because just be yourself and make sure you have up to date photos. That's important too, because I know I have gone on someone where I was like, was that photo from like 20 years ago? Or you look way different. I don't know how to nicely say this, but, and then sometimes those generic descriptions can kind of be tough. So I say, skip the generic stuff and also be positive. So do be positive. Don't be negative. Do, do the specifics if you can. But again, the less is more as well. So I'm not saying mention, your drama, your finances, nothing like that. That's stuff that absolutely, I'm not saying hide those things, but they're for a little bit later down the road. So that is the simple aspect there. So let's say good, you've gone back and forth with these questions. I do want to say, when I get a like online, if I just get a like and I don't get a question, I immediately delete. I'm not interested. For me, I want a man that's going to look at my profile enough to have some interest and say, hey, love that picture. It looks like you might have been in Italy. Where was your favorite spot? Or what was your favorite food while you were there? Something to engage and something to acknowledge my profile, to know that, oh, you've got some interest. Because if it's just a like, I don't feel like there's a genuine interest. Um, And so for me, I find my style a little bit is to lean back because I do want more of a masculine man that isn't afraid to lead. But woman, to the women out there, if you are one that's like, oh, I'm not afraid to, reach out to the man, same kind of thing. Don't just do a like, comment on his pictures. If you see that he might like cars or he might like golfing, for example, be like, hey, where's your favorite golf course you've ever golfed at? Something like that to get the conversation going. And then the most important thing I can say to both men and women, I will say there are so many men that do this. And it's one of my, I hate to say online pet peeves, but it's when the conversation just ends. It's like where I'm constantly the one asking the question. So it's like I'll ask the question and they respond and they ping it back to me with no question or anything. And I'm like, well, where do I go from here? I'm tired of just back and forth me asking the question. And I'll just stop it at that and I'll wait to see, okay, if they don't say anything back, I kind of just let that guy fizzle because it's not engaging. It's not fun for me. So I'd love to hear, let me know your perspective there. How do you feel about that? Do you love to be the one asking the question the entire time, or does that irk you as well? I'll even say I've gotten that once you get to that point where, um, what was the other one I was going to give an example? Shoot, I don't have it in my notes, so I don't remember right now. I'll bring it back up if I think of it. But one other big piece to the puzzle is dang it, guys. I lost my train of thought. So let me get back onto my track here. Transitioning to the date. That's what I wanted to talk about. So, you've been messaging back and forth. You got to the point where, okay, this person's engaging. Maybe you even got to a phone call. You could say that if you're like, all right, this has been a really fun conversation. I'd love to take it to a phone call, or maybe we can meet in person. So for men, be clear and confident. Say something like, I'm really enjoying this. How about we grab coffee this weekend? Or women, you can absolutely be open, encouraging to kind of help them out a bit. Say, this has been really fun. I'd love to meet in person or talk on the phone. Let me know what works for you. Those type of things will kind of reassure each sex that you're like, yeah, let's move on to the next step. And for me, I want to hear what you think. I would much rather have a conversation and meet in person sooner than later because I just want to see if there is that connection in person. I think it's really important to see how you jive. So we got to the date, part two. This is where it can be super fun, maybe a little awkward. So also the check part. It's like I'm a big believer, trying to be more in my feminine when it comes to relationships. I'm definitely in my masculine a lot with my career and work. So for me to find a man, I really want him to kind of take more of the masculine lead and me to lean back. And not to say we can't be yin and yang and like balance each other out, be a mutual partnership. I think that's great. Absolutely. So I just know for me, I want a man that takes the lead and is not afraid, especially if he asks me on the date. Because I've been on some dates too from the real world. And I do have an example there. We just met in the city and he did pursue, asked for my phone number. So that's great. We finally went on our first date and the check came and it was so awkward. So I'll tell you about that. But I think it's really important as a man, if you're looking for more of that feminine energy woman, to take the bill. So we'll get into that in just a second. The first things first, dues for the dates. Yes, show up in time. It's such a sign of respect and to be courteous of each other. Don't flake. Like if you've really made this decision to go, don't be that person that flakes last minute. You really owe it to both of yourselves to just go and see what happens. Unless you really know, maybe some conversation popped up and you both are like, yeah, this is not a good fit. Of course, just make sure you call, let them know prior to that date. Be present and be engaged. Put your phone away. This is so crucial. I think the only time to really bring up a phone anytime, work meeting, date, friendship visit, is really put that phone away until you have something that you want to show picture wise. It's just a sign of respect and it makes that person feel valued and appreciated. So super, super important. And then I always think, for the first date, suggest these low pressure kind of casual dates to really just see, it can be a simple activity where one, you do feel safe. You want to be safe and in public, ladies. Men, for you, you want to watch those ones that are trying to get money. And actually women, we have to be afraid of that too. There's the fake profiles, fake scammers, not fake scammers, they're real scammers out there creating these fake profiles, so they think you're legit, but they're really just wanting to get your money. I can spot them right away. So if you need help on that, you let me know. Also, if you need help with your profile, let me know. I love creating a profile. So, but let me go back to, yeah, low casual. So coffee, happy hour, you name it. Just something maybe within an hour and a half to 2 hours. It doesn't need to be a long date. And then of course, this is such an obvious one, and I hope anybody listening here, I don't even have to say this, but being kind to the service staff. It so shows a lot about your character. So for me, if a man is not good to the service staff, that is a huge red flag, and I'm instantly turned off, and my date is done in my mind already. Like I could almost at that point try to create a reason that I have to go. If I see somebody who's rude, inconsiderate, done. So I hope that's not the person that you are. But if you find that you're on a date with someone, man or woman, that's your sign that, oof, shows a lot about character. So those are your do's, and things to be aware of. And then the don'ts, I would say don't drink excessively, keep it light and classy. So if you do decide, let's meet for happy hour, we did this, I did this dating site, and it was a lot of fun. I think I talked about it in one of my earlier podcasts, but one of the girls, she was just wasted. And I almost was kind of not worried because we were in a safe environment, but I thought, wow, um, it's one, it's not safe, ladies. Two, for men, I haven't seen none of the men were wasted, but yeah, it's just good to come as your own beautiful self. You don't need to put any you know, drugs or alcohol with that. So, and I'm not one. That's a nice thing that is on our profile these days. Do you do drugs? Yes or no? So you can actually put that on your profile. And if a man does drugs, I'm not interested. So that's another kind of foundational thing. So make sure you're on the same page there. And then refrain from bringing up those heavy topics. So exes, sometimes I get that we want to ask a little bit about, okay, if they're recently, in a breakup or something, you might want to talk about a bit, but I really believe in the early stages, just leave that out. It's not necessary to talk about finances, especially. So I want to talk about this example of the date that I was just on. And it's funny because I've known this guy from the city, and really nice guy, good guy. And had been pestering me to go on a date for a long time. And I've just kind of been pushing him off because he's not necessarily my type, but he's a good one. And he was so persistent and was just constantly pursuing. So I thought, yep, I'm going to go. So the first thing though, I didn't feel like he really sent me the details, the plan of what was happening. It was very like, yeah, you want to go on a date, and no phone call about it, no planning. Finally I had to ask, and this should have been my red flags too, right, ladies? If I'm having to ask too much about it, I was like, hey, so are we still on for tomorrow? Kind of like, I haven't heard anything. Do we pick a spot? You know, I really shouldn't even had to be do that. If I was reaching out, maybe he didn't want to go as bad as I thought he did. But I finally did confirm because that's just the sales girl in me. So here I'm in my masculine energy now instead of feminine. That's what I didn't like about this entire date. I felt like the man in the relationship the entire time. So I'm the one on time. I show up. He's not there yet. I was like, I wonder if he made a reservation because it was like 5:30 on a Thursday, pretty busy. And there was no reservation. So I was like, okay, can I just put our name in? So finally, I go to the bar to wait for him. He shows up like 10 minutes, 5, 10 minutes late. We get to the table. It was a nice conversation, but here's where I want to go with it. I felt like I was being checked like on a list. He kept asking these questions where I was like, check, check, check. And not even, and I'm not saying the check for, I'm saying checking his list of what he wanted. And one of the questions that it felt like, I'm like, are we getting married tomorrow or what's happening here? Instead of just having light, fun conversation, getting to know each other, I don't mind foundational questions, but, and this one is a good one. If it would have been the only one like this, it was, hey, so if you were to get married, would you be fine getting rid of your job and just, you know, just being married? And I was like, you mean, well, like if my person had the money and I didn't need to worry about money and, my future and retirement? He's like, yeah. I was like, well, absolutely. Like I love my career, but I've done it just because it has just been me and I have to provide for myself and I've been a career woman. But I would absolutely, if somebody wanted to travel the world and he was retired, I was retired, absolutely, 100%. So, okay, that's cool. So this guy, like I said, he has the finances. I know that about him. Well, the server comes up and she says, one check or two. And she's kind of looking at him, but he's just quiet and he's looking at me. And I was like, kind of looking to him. And he says, yeah. And she goes, kind of like, yeah. And she asks again, one check? And he goes, yeah. And then she's like, okay. So she comes back, puts the check in the middle of the table. And he sees it. I see it. He knows that I saw it. And it just sits there. It sits there and sits there. And I will tell you, men, if you like a woman, just grab that so she doesn't even have to wonder or feel bad. But then the lesson to me as a woman in my feminine, I should have been like, you know what? It's okay. I'm going to let him grab that check. So this is funny. I want to hear your opinions, ladies. If you like a guy, do you allow him to pay? That's what I do. If I like a guy, I allow him to pay. If I don't, I might offer. So this is going to tell you how I felt about him. I did say, I kind of put my hand, I started, if you're on the video, you can see me doing this. I'm like kind of reaching my hand towards the middle of the table, trying to see what he's going to say or do, because I was like, you want me to help or split it? Or I basically said that, should we split it? And I think he finally said, oh, no, no, I got it. But he wasn't like happily about getting it. Like, this is a gift I want to give to you. And keep in mind, he asked me on the date. He had been pursuing me for months. So with that being said, he does pay for it. And all we got was a couple appetizers because it was our first date. So we had one drink and appetizers, and we were there for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Long story short, we did not go on another date. He had said something like, hey, it was great to see you. I enjoyed our date. And I just said, yeah, it was nice to catch up. I think I said, nice to catch up, best of luck, something like that. So where I go with this is, moral of the story here, can be an awkward thing, the check, but it is a moment of truth. For men, if you asked her out, confidently take the lead and grab the check. For women, if he's paying, thank him. If you're not interested, you can absolutely offer to split. If you like him though, I really thank you. I really appreciate it. And, avoid letting the check sit there awkwardly. It's so attractive to have a decisive man, or heck, if you are more of a masculine woman and you don't mind dating more of like a man that is okay with you paying, that's great. There's always that yin to the yang. Sometimes a more masculine woman will be with more of a feminine energy man. But whoever is going to take the check, be decisive and attractive about it. It's just grabbing it, no question. I've got this. So I don't know why that felt like an off limit topic. Like sometimes I don't think people talk about it enough. It's a weird, awkward conversation. But I hope that this made sense to you. So let me know what your thoughts are. I will say dating can feel like an absolute roller coaster. It is the wild, wild west out there. But it can also be a lot of fun if you keep the right perspective. So laugh at the awkward moments, which I definitely did. I think I told my girlfriends about that one. Learn from the misses, which I absolutely do that as well. Celebrate the good connections, because I have had a lot of good connections. And even that recent one, that date, it was fun. We had a great conversation. And you know what it did? It gave me hope for men, where I liked the fact that I think he's about, he's maybe 10 years older than me. And I thought that's pretty cool that he knows I don't have kids and we wouldn't be having kids, that he was also like, yeah, I think it'd be cool if you didn't have to work and we would get to travel and go have retirement together. So you always see something good about these individuals. So whether you're a man dating a woman dating a man, find the good in them. And again, celebrate those connections along the way. Don't forget to follow the podcast, leave a review, and share with someone who could really use a little dating advice or just a good laugh. This is Off Limits with Elle Daily. And as I always say, just don't do it. Don't do it, guys and gals. All right. Sending you lots of love, and I will see you on the next podcast. Oh, and if you haven't watched episode, I want to say it's 14 for the men, 15 for the women, all about our hormones and the cycles, check them out. I think you'll love it. All right. Bye.